Shocking breaking news. Roman Reigns rushed to California hospital after Seth Rollins collapses. They thought they buried the truth behind closed curtains. They thought the cameras wouldn't catch it. But they were wrong. What happened inside that California medical facility just hours ago is not just heartbreaking, it's enraging. The WWE Universe has been shaken to its very core, not just by what happened to Seth Rollins in that brutal collapse backstage, but by what it triggered in Roman Reigns. And now, in a moment that has stunned the entire wrestling world, we've received verified reports that Reigns, yes, the tribal chief himself, has been rushed to a California hospital under emergency conditions. This isn't kayfabe. This isn't a storyline. This is real. And it's terrifying. Because what the fans saw in the ring was only the tip of a dark, boiling iceberg. The truth is that both Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns have been under mounting pressure, physical, emotional, and political. And tonight, it all exploded. Let's rewind, just briefly, to the chaos that unfolded only hours ago. Seth Rollins, scheduled to appear for a brief backstage promo segment, never made it in front of the cameras. Instead, eyewitnesses say the atmosphere turned grim when several staff members were seen sprinting down the corridor. What they found was Seth Rollins, unconscious, slumped beside a flight case with blood dripping from his forehead and a medical team rushing in within seconds. The cause? WWE officials initially claimed dehydration and fatigue. But that lie didn't last long. Because Roman Reigns was there. And he saw it happen. Sources confirm that when Roman arrived at the scene and saw Rollins lying on the floor, something in him shattered. He screamed, actually screamed, a sound fans have never heard from the cold, calculating tribal chief. And within moments, Roman dropped to his knees beside his former Shield brother, his hand trembling over Seth's chest, yelling for someone to get a real doctor, not WWE's clowns. It was in that moment, according to multiple backstage crew members, that Roman began to hyperventilate. His arms stiffened. His breathing turned erratic. And just minutes after medics carted Rollins away on a stretcher, Reigns collapsed too. Both men, taken out, in the same hour. But here's where the story gets even darker. Because this wasn't just physical. No, this was psychological warfare. And someone pulled the trigger. Inside sources from WWE headquarters in Stamford are now leaking internal memos, unverified but compelling, suggesting that Roman Reigns has been under surveillance. Not by fans, not by the press, but by people within the WWE machine itself. Why? Because he knew something. Something about Seth's condition. Something about a betrayal so deep, so vile, it could rip what's left of the Shield legacy apart forever. And that truth, it might have pushed Roman to the edge. Because those who were at the California General Medical Center say Roman didn't walk into the ER under his own power. He was dragged in, sweating, pale, unable to speak. Medical staff had to sedate him on the spot. Some say he was in shock. Others say it looked more like an emotional breakdown masked as a panic attack. But the symptoms were unmistakable. Elevated heart rate, erratic behavior, and silent tears. Yes, Roman Reigns, silent, crying. The man who once ruled WWE with an iron fist. The man who dismantled John Cena, conquered Brock Lesnar, and outsmarted Triple H, was now lying on a hospital gurney, broken. And the cause of this collapse? That's where things get ugly. Because just as fans began tweeting prayers for Roman and Seth, just as #PrayForRoman trended globally, an anonymous Instagram account, bearing the name, The Real Architect, posted a video. A video that appears to show Seth Rollins, 1 week before his collapse, arguing with none other than Paul Heyman. The audio is grainy, the angle shaky. But the words, "I'm tired of covering for Roman." Heyman, calm as ever, replies, "You want to expose him? Go ahead. Just don't come crying when this empire crumbles." And now, that empire has cracked at its foundations. Because Roman and Seth, despite their history, had been quietly patching things up behind the scenes. They were no longer enemies. No longer at war. But allies, or so we thought. Now, the footage suggests there were secrets. Massive ones. And it adds a disturbing layer to why Seth collapsed, and why Roman followed. Medical insiders now whisper that Roman might be facing something far worse than a panic attack. One nurse, speaking under anonymity, said Roman displayed symptoms of neurological trauma, and was being transferred to a private observation wing normally reserved for VIPs and trauma victims. Another source said he was muttering things about betrayal, about Seth, and about not being able to protect his family. And that word, family, it hits deep. Because Roman's identity, his power, his brand, has always been built on family. The bloodline, the shield, his children, his cousins, his wife, Galena, and now, with Seth fighting for consciousness and Roman hooked to IVs in a sterile California hospital bed, that very foundation is under siege. What was said between Seth and Heyman? What does covering for Roman even mean? Who exactly pushed Roman to his breaking point? And perhaps the biggest question of all, who gains from this double collapse? Because as of this moment, someone is celebrating. Someone inside the WWE hierarchy is pulling strings, feeding leaks, and orchestrating chaos. And until Roman Reigns regains consciousness, until Seth Rollins wakes up, the fans may never know the full truth. But one thing is clear, this isn't over. It's just the beginning. Let me know when you're ready to continue with the next section. Back inside the hospital, the scene remained tense. Sources close to the Reigns family revealed that Roman's wife, Galena Becker, arrived at the California ER shortly after he was admitted. Eyewitnesses described her as visibly shaken, barely able to speak as she rushed past reporters and security. One nurse, who had previously attended to injured athletes during WrestleMania week, said she had never seen that much fear in a spouse's eyes. She wasn't just afraid of losing her husband, she was terrified of what caused this. Roman had no history of panic disorders or mental breakdowns, at least, not publicly. But insiders are beginning to paint a more disturbing picture. According to a now-deleted tweet by an anonymous backstage WWE medic, Roman had been complaining of chest pains, disorientation, and severe insomnia in recent weeks. He wasn't sleeping. He was pacing the halls of the Performance Center long after midnight. And more than once, he allegedly asked security staff if the cameras were off. Paranoia, distrust, silence. This is not the Roman Reigns the WWE Universe knows. But perhaps we never really knew him at all. Seth's collapse may have been the final straw. But it was not the start of the story. No, this goes back weeks, even months. Back to the moment Paul Heyman began distancing himself from Roman, back to the moment Solo Sikoa began assuming more control within the bloodline. What if this wasn't a random medical emergency? What if this was the final act in a slow, methodical takedown of the man once called the head of the table? Because here's where the timelines begin to intersect. Multiple sources, including a backstage lighting tech who has worked over 50 WWE events, claim Roman and Seth had a heated conversation after last week's Monday Night Raw. What started as a friendly exchange in the locker room escalated into yelling behind closed doors. No producers were present, no cameras, but two words were allegedly heard by someone standing near the catering tables. "You lied." We still don't know who said it, or what it referred to, but that moment seems to have set this entire disaster in motion. And now, both men are broken. And someone is benefiting. Paul Heyman, the so-called wise man, has been noticeably absent. He was last seen leaving WWE HQ late last night, declining interviews and offering only one cryptic message to TMZ: "Sometimes, you must burn the empire to reveal the truth beneath." Is Heyman behind this? Did he manipulate both Seth and Roman into a confrontation that neither man could emotionally survive? Or was he warning them of someone even more dangerous lurking behind the scenes? Some fans believe this goes higher. Much higher. There are whispers, dangerous ones, that Vince McMahon's influence still lingers in the shadows, despite his recent retirement. That certain executives inside WWE are leveraging emotional trauma to create real drama. Real headlines. Real casualties. And if that's true, then Roman Reigns may have just become a sacrificial pawn in a game that none of us knew was being played. But the fans aren't staying quiet. Outside the hospital, a growing crowd has gathered. Not paparazzi. Not journalists. But fans. Loyal ones. Shield-era diehards holding signs that read, "Believe in Reigns," and, "Don't let this be the end." Some have traveled for hours just to stand vigil outside the medical center, holding candles, chanting his name. Hoping that maybe, just maybe, their voices will reach him. Inside, the atmosphere is silent. Grim. Nurses have confirmed that both Seth and Roman are being kept in separate rooms under 24/7 watch. Security has been tightened. WWE staff have been banned from visiting without approval. Only close family. Only blood. Which raises another question. Where is the rest of the bloodline? Where is Solo Sikoa? Where is Jimmy Uso? Why haven't they spoken? Why haven't they visited? The silence is deafening. Because while Roman Reigns lays unconscious, hooked to heart monitors and sedatives, the people he once protected, his so-called family, have disappeared. Not a single public statement. Not even a tweet. It's as if they've already moved on. As if they were waiting for this. But what happens if Roman wakes up? What if he regains his voice? What truths will he tell? Because Seth Rollins' collapse may have opened the floodgates. But Roman's condition, Roman's potential awakening, that could detonate everything. The Shield, the Bloodline, the WWE locker room, even the power hierarchy in Stamford. And what if this was all orchestrated? What if Roman Reigns was never supposed to survive the fallout? Because there are whispers. One insider, a former creative team member, said something chilling on a wrestling podcast just hours ago. You don't understand. Roman wasn't just the face of the company, he was protecting something. And now that he's down, everyone is exposed. Exposed to what? That's the question haunting every WWE executive tonight. Because no matter how powerful the suits in Stamford are, no matter how tightly the narrative is controlled, Roman Reigns' collapse cannot be explained away. Not as dehydration, not as exhaustion, not as stress. This is something deeper, something personal, and someone wants to make sure we never know the full story. But we will. Because the WWE Universe is watching, investigating, demanding answers. And for once, the silence from WWE is only making the outrage louder. This isn't just a medical update. This is a declaration. Something is broken at the very heart of WWE. And unless the truth is exposed, unless someone finds the courage to speak up, then Roman Reigns' collapse won't be the last. He's not just fighting for his health. He's fighting to reveal something no one else dares to say. And now, with every second ticking inside that California hospital, the world is waiting. Will Roman Reigns wake up? Will Seth Rollins